Great Reset Agenda. We've all heard this, how you'll own nothing and you'll be happy by the year 2030. But a lot of us, me included, have sat there and scratched our heads and say, well, wait a minute, how is this actually going to play out? I mean, I own my house, I own my car. How are they going to take this away from me? What's their proposition? How are they going to make this happen? Are they going to, are they going to print money and buy it from the middle class? Or are they going to force everyone to retrofit their house and no one can afford it? And therefore, you've got to sell your property to the Fed. Is the Fed going to own all the mortgage-backed securities? And therefore, maybe they're the final lien holder. They're going to foreclose on everyone. I mean, how does this all play out? Well, I think that if you look at these next couple charts, it'll give you some insight. So let's dive right in. And we'll start with this chart. Here we go. So it's a chart. I think we've actually referenced this today. I've been referencing it a lot lately because I think it's really important. But let's forget the blue line for a moment and let's look at the red line. This is 30-year fixed rate mortgages. So right now we're trading, you can get one maybe 3.45%. And you guys that watched my whiteboard video the other day, and if you didn't, I'd highly recommend the whiteboard. I thought I had it pulled up here. It's on the George Gammon account, this one. So if you go to George Gammon, it's the one that's most recent with the red thumbnail, this one. So this is where I go over this chart in the housing market. So if you want more details on that, you can check it out. But if this red line goes higher, as you guys know, that's going to make housing far less affordable. Because if you can afford, let's say, a $2,000 a month payment right now, and let's say that $2,000 a month payment buys you a $500,000 house, well, okay, that's at 3.45 interest rates. If interest rates go up to 6 or 7 or 8, now all of a sudden that $2,000 a month payment only buys you a $250,000 home, you see? And then we have to think about the supply side. Now, supply side most likely would change. We may have more supply, prices come down. But if the supply side doesn't change in a lot of areas and continues to go up in nominal terms, even though it can come down in real terms, you could see yourself being priced out of the market very quickly. At least not, and if you're not priced out of the market, you're at least priced out of the market of the homes that you want to buy, that you would find acceptable. So let's remember also that housing prices are at all-time highs in nominal terms and even in real terms when you adjust for the rate of inflation. So how does this work out for home affordability when nominal prices are way higher than they were in 2006, the peak of the last bubble? And if interest rates start to go up on the mortgage rates when the Fed starts to tighten, assuming that they reduce tapering down to zero and actually start the interest rate hikes along with quantitative tightening, that's another form of tighter monetary policy. I don't want to say tighter monetary policy. That's a stretch. It's another way to put pressure on asset prices. Let me just put it to you that way. But it can put pressure on asset prices, risk assets like the stock market. But remember the real estate market, different dynamics there with supply and demand. We went over this in a video last week. And if you think about it, the supply side of housing, when prices are going down, although there may be more sellers, that is true, but there's going to be fewer builders building when prices are going down. Whereas in the stock market, when prices are going down, usually you have more supply of stocks, not just because people are selling, but because the corporations that are issuing shares may be selling those shares, or they may be issuing more shares to generate capital they need. But on the way up, usually they're buying their shares back. So it's reducing the supply. So a different supply dynamic there with housing. So again, I think this is something we really need to pay attention to, is home affordability assuming that this stays high in nominal terms, and it can come down in real terms very, very easily. I think at some point it has to. But it stays high at nominal terms, and then interest rates go up. That's going to make the home affordability a lot more difficult, and therefore fewer people owning homes. So let's go into the next chart. This is the home ownership rate in the United States. So we got up to a high in 2005 when the government was really pushing everyone getting a home, everyone getting a home, everyone getting a home. We all remember that. And it got to a high right around 70%, call it 69.2. I think that's where it probably topped out, 69.2. And then it came all the way down to a low of about 63%. Then we came back up during the cerveza sickness. It's really crashed back down, very volatile there, until it's about 65%. Okay, so what happens to this if housing prices continue to go up in nominal terms while interest rates go up? Well, you're most likely going to see this line go down. If this line goes down, that means fewer and fewer people owning homes, more and more people renting, which gets us closer to you will own nothing and you'll be happy. It's not, I don't think they're saying that their objective is for no one to own anything. I think their objective is for far fewer people to own something. And if you continue to increase the prices of something and you increase the cost of owning it, i.e. interest rates, then fewer people, by definition, are going to own whatever it is that you don't want them to own. And you're coming closer to your objective. Now, it's not just with housing. It's also the same thing with cars. If you guys listened to my interview the other day with Eric Peters, he was talking about how the car industry, because of the regulations by the government, and let's be honest, that's most likely influenced by the global elite at Davos, World Economic Forum, IMF, etc. They're changing all of these rules for car makers. Therefore, the car makers have to make them more fuel efficient, increase safety standards. And you may say, well, George, that's a great thing. Okay, fine. That's great. But what it does is it makes the car more expensive. So you may like it, but the cost is going to go up. So, and this is exactly what we've seen just since 2016. Look at how much car prices have gone up. You know, they started here, let's say 34,000. Now we're almost at 40,000. The average cost of a new car is almost $40,000. I mean, it's staggering. And you say, well, everyone can afford one. Well, yeah, really? Maybe when interest rates are at 0%. With Fed funds, what happens when interest rates are at 6, 7, 8, 9% on a car loan? It's the exact same thing as far as affordability with homes. So what we're doing is we're constricting supply through government decree and government distortions, economic distortions. And then what we're doing is we're raising the prices through, you want to call it money printing, using that term loosely, but then we're also increasing prices through all of these regulations where they have to include X, Y, and Z. I mean, look at all the regulations for homes now that we didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago. And again, you could say that's a good thing. Well, it's going to make it more expensive. And same thing with cars. And I think the global elite are going to continue to push more and more and more of these laws, regulations on the builders and on the car manufacturers, all in the name of safety, all in the name of cleaner air, all in the name of climate change, fuel efficiency, moving off of carbon-based fossil fuels, right? It's going to be, you know, the sales pitch is very easy. Well, we've got to do this to save the planet. Okay, that's fine. But in the process, you're going to make things that most people want to own increasingly more and more expensive. And therefore, if you make the price of a car, an average car, let's say, go from 40,000 up to 80,000, while at the same time interest rates increase. If the average cost of a home goes from Where's our chart? If the average cost of a home, let's say, goes from where we are now up to here, and interest rates increase, well, then how many people are going to own a home? Not many. Not many at all, because no one can really afford to own a home. So you really have this bifurcation in society where it is true, some people still own a house, some people own a car, but it looks more like Mexico, right? Where maybe the top 20% of people own a home or own a car, and the bottom 80% cannot. And the United States and the West, I think, in general, I think we see this trend really play out over the next 8 years. And if prices continue to go up at the same rate, and I'm not saying they will in real terms, but in nominal terms, maybe they do. They continue to go up at the same rate. And plus, let's say we do get increase in interest rates. Let's say interest rates normalize. And then you compound that. I mean, is it any stretch to think that if we're at 60, call it 5% right now in home ownership, that by 2030, 8 years, that we couldn't be below 50? I mean, I think we could be down at 40%. And then same thing for cars. I don't know what the car ownership rate is right now in the United States, but if in the next 8 years, this goes from 40 grand up to 80 grand, how many of the millennials and Gen Z or whatever they are, that are now paying off $200,000 in student debt, how many of those kids that will be the adults in 8 years, how many of them are going to be able to afford a car if the average new car price is 80 grand? Again, probably a lot less than 50%. So, and then how many of those people, because housing is so expensive, they have to rent, how many of those people are going to live out in the middle of nowhere if they can't afford a car? Very few. So how many of those people move to the urban areas, which again, if you read the Great Reset Agenda, is exactly what they want. They want as many people as possible living in compact urban areas, riding bicycles and renting everything, and just have their drone drop it off. And then don't go outside, just live your entire life in the betaverse with virtual reality. That's really the objective. If you're trying to control people, it's way easier to control them if they don't have a car. And I mean, that sounds kind of just basic, like like I'm almost joking, but I think that one through. Like seriously think that one through. And this was part of the discussion I had with Eric Peters the other day. And if you took away, let's say right now, 80% of the people own cars. Let's say in the future, that's 20%. How much easier is that population to control? Right? We forget how much freedom a car actually gives us. If 80% of the people are living in these compact areas, they don't own anything, they just take a bike everywhere, or if they have to use a car to get from one side of town to the other, it's just through an Uber or some sort of robot car that takes them. Right? How much freedom do they have? Not much. Not much at all. How are they going to bug out? You could take your bike to your bug out property. Good luck with that one. So I think this is kind of a more realistic way for us to own nothing, and you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Not that that's going to be 100% of people, but just a greater and greater and greater percentage until we get to 2030, where the majority of the population does not own a home because they can't afford one, and the majority of the population does not own a car, same thing, because they can't afford one. And that population is far easier to control.